Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to this Naked Mind podcast. I'm here with Robbie. Welcome, Robbie. How are you?
Hi, Annie. I'm good. Nice to be
Awesome.
here.
It's so good to have you here. I'm really looking forward to this. So, why don't you just start at the beginning? Back us up. Let us know first drink, early days, early interactions with alcohol, stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. So, while I was getting ready for this, I became aware that it's been a while since I've bared my soul, which I have no problem doing. But I've been alcohol free for 18 months. And the longer it goes, the more things make sense to me and things I discover that I can relate to alcohol and going way back, right? It's like I became an impartial observer of my life, and I could look at everything without the shame and the guilt, and understand so much. So that's been everything for me, actually. But as far as my alcohol story, so I'm going to look at my notes because I tend to be a real yapper and I don't want to get too far off course.
We've got time, so.
Okay. So, yeah, in high school and college, I did not drink much. And when I did, I got sick really easily. So I would go just huge chunks of time without even just being afraid to do it because I was like violently ill. And what I have realized in thinking back to that time frame that I can't believe I never actually made the connection with, but I've been married it'll be 30 years in November. And I met my husband when I was 13, when I was in junior high. And then we went through high school together and we stayed together through college. And he never drank. He just did not drink. He was super clean.
So wait, you met and stayed with him since you were 13?
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast.
Oh my gosh. I'm just like sitting here thinking, I have an 11-year-old who's been quite serious about a girl. And I just, in my mind, I'm like, never gonna so
yeah. Let's say I don't advise it, but it worked out all right. So, and what I have discovered has been super powerful for me with my marriage. So, he never drank. And I had this group of girlfriends and we were all partiers, but I spent most of my time with him. So I think that that's one of the big reasons why I didn't drink much in high school. And then in college, I didn't do so well in college. I ended up dropping out a lot, moving back home, and I had some real anxiety and depression, and like drinking just wasn't part of the equation. The other thing I realized, which just made me like fall in love with my husband again, is that probably around when I was 15 or 16, he took me out to dinner. He was a couple years older than I was. And I got up the courage to talk to him about my house and what it was like in my house. And as far as I understood it, like I hadn't spoken with anyone about it, but I knew that my dad drank tons and that it made me really sad and frustrated. And I had these girlfriends I had been friends with for years, and I had 4 older siblings, but I had never spoken with anybody about it. And, knowing my husband like I do now, I think it was because I felt safe and I felt unjudged, and he didn't try to fix anything and he didn't have any ideas, but he just listened to me. Beautiful. And after a few of these discussions, and they didn't happen a lot, but I would bring it up when I needed to, and I'm not going to, I'm not going to tell his story on here, but he shared with me his own story growing up. And so we had this bond around that, which I think explains why we stayed, part of it, why we stayed together. Was
that really young? That was like early. Wow, very cool.
Yeah, there was this trust there, and this respect there. And not to say, it's all been great, it surely hasn't, but it put a new twist on that early relationship for me. So yeah, I've never talked to anybody about that except him. And it just started making sense to me in the last year.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So let me flip my page here. So we got married. I got married when I was 22, and I had my first child when I was 24, and I had 3 kids by the time I was 29. And so my 20s, I didn't drink either. Like I just was pregnant or breastfeeding, or it wasn't on my radar yet. I would drink occasionally when we went out. I would drink I think the first thing I started drinking was like white Zinfandel because it was super sweet or something, I don't know. But it wasn't a thing. And then in my 30s, I started drinking more socially. I would go on these trips. My husband was great. He would watch the kids, and I would go on these trips with my girlfriends, which were drunk fests. And, you know, I'm a puker. I just feel like every time I drink, I got sick. And so for a while, that would help me stay away from it. But I started drinking more in my 30s. I wasn't having any more kids. And I can go back to this time in my 30s when my oldest daughter, she was 6 at the time, she got really sick. And well, when I say really sick, she had this weird condition. It's called precocious puberty. I don't know if you know anything about it, but it's basically hormones out of control. And it can be a pituitary gland thing. It can be due to other things. But in her case, she had this her 6-year-old birthday party. She was into ballet at the time. We had a ballet birthday party, and they all had leotards on. And I remember looking at her thinking, hope this is okay to say, she has little breast buds. And I was like, what, you know, because she was thin. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? And she actually had her 6-year checkup right after that, and I brought it up to the doctor. And so not to get too far into this, but she had precocious puberty, and one of the causes is sometimes little girls, for whatever reason, they start to have cysts on their ovaries, and the cysts cause the ovaries to produce massive amounts of hormones which mimic puberty, right? She was 6 years old. And so they basically told me, you know, I live in Western Massachusetts, we went to Boston, we went to these specialists, that she had to have that ovary removed, and maybe the other one too. And I can remember being in the hospital. I had gone alone with her to get an ultrasound, and it was a snowy day, and I was just like hell-bent on getting there so that I could figure out what was going on. And I remember them telling me this and thinking, for lack of better words, I think I said to myself, I can't. I felt like I can't do this. Like up until then, I just had to take care of myself, and my kids, you know, were babies, and I was doing all right, but this was just like different. And, you know, I don't know if I went and bought a bottle of wine that night and brought it home, but it's the beginning of what I saw as like me saying to myself over and over again, you can't do this. And there was no other voice coming in and saying you can. And I know that if I had said this to someone else, they would have said all the right things, but I don't think they would have heard me. I think it was just my rising anxiety. And I started drinking in my 30s. That's when I started drinking at home. And again, not every day or not every night. I never drank in the day. It was at night, and not usually to excess unless I was out with my girlfriends. Never did that with my husband. And that was my 30s. And then it's like when my 40s hit, let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, when my 40s hit, it was like kapow, everything blew up. So in 2009, I would have been 41. I had the last of what was a major bout of depression. It's probably my 4th since I was a teenager, where I literally didn't get out of bed. And this is even with 3 kids, that it had happened a couple times. And this time it was so bad. I think my anxiety was so high all the time. It was my normal. I crashed, like I physically and mentally, I crashed, and I couldn't do it. And I said that to my husband. I didn't say it to my husband. I was a nurse, and I got off my shift, and I called my sister. It was a hot August afternoon. And I called her and I said, I can't do this. And she jumped into action, and she started communicating with my husband. I think it's really interesting that I didn't call him. I think it's because he was home with the 3 kids, and I knew that, yeah, I was sparing him. I don't know. But anyway, she jumped into action, and then the 2 of them together, and I wanted this. I ended up spending a week on a psych ward. It was like time slowed down, and I just was there. And I remember sitting in this room, it's just like a couple couches alone, and there were these old books on the table. And I've always been a big reader. I didn't have anything else to do. And one of them was about anxiety, and I started reading it. And I was like, and I read it cover to cover over like 2 days. And one of the social workers there, when I left, said he had noticed, and he talked to me about it. And so I started to understand anxiety. I started to understand like generalized anxiety disorder. You know, they had been throwing around things like bipolar 2 and all this other stuff. And when I left that hospital, it was the beginning of me sort of not just asking for help, but advocating for myself. And going to therapists and saying, I don't want to be on lithium. They had put me on lithium. I don't think I need to be on lithium. This is what I think. Can I try this? And luckily I had a therapist out of the hospital she listened, and we tried different things. And so that time frame, basically 10 years, was the beginning for me of a lot of different kind of work. I'd always been to therapy, but it was different kind of therapy. And, you know, I still continue to do all the things that you think are going to make you better, exercising. I've been a vegetarian for 19 years, you know, tried all the things. But not only didn't look at alcohol, but it didn't really register right away that that was something I absolutely had to deal with. And so that was in the 40s. And then I'm kind of I'm just on autopilot, and I'm drinking more and more at home. Not a lot when I go out. I would kind of arrange it so that I could have one glass out, and then, you know, I'd either drink before or after. And then, so 2016, yeah, to 19, 2016 to 2019, like a snapshot of my life was a mom whose last child had left home. Gone off to college, and so that focus was gone, right? And I had a job where I really liked the people that I worked with, but the environment as a whole was not healthy, and I was really unhappy there. I was only working part-time, and so I was home alone a lot. And my first career had been as a journalist, and I've always been a news junkie. And so picture me sitting on my couch with my dog and the TV on, and I was watching the 24-hour news cycle, and my anxiety was just building and building and building, and I was pouring glass of wine after glass of wine. And it's in that time frame that I knew, like, this can't be good. This can't be good. You're drinking this much wine in the middle of the day and watching news on repeat, and you're not doing anything to make anything better, right? But I kept watching the news. I've tried to explain this to my husband, looking for some sort of external cue, something external that somebody was going to say or something was going to happen that was going to make me feel better. And then I could move on, right? And I did that for a couple of years, and my drinking got worse and worse and worse. And so then enter February 2019. And so in my town, there's a city council. And I've always been into politics, and I've served on small boards and things like that, but never anything very demanding. I decided to run for city council. And so I put my name in the hat, and I was interviewed by the paper, and it was in the paper, and I got awesome feedback. I started lining up people that wanted to work with me and thinking about my issues, starting meeting with people I'd never met just to learn more. And that lasted 2 weeks. And I woke up one morning and I called my sister again. I said, I can't do this. I can't do this. Like every part of me is screaming, I can't do this. And so she was super supportive, and she said, then don't. And so I had to do the humiliating, task of calling the newspaper and saying I'm pulling out, and I'm asking why. And I used my mother as a cover. It wasn't all entirely untrue, but I had been taking care of her for 4 years. I was her primary caretaker. She didn't live with me, but I was there all the time. It was getting more demanding. So it was really easy for me to say to them and to myself, this is too much right now, right? Mm-hmm. And so another 6 weeks, 8 weeks went by, and I was miserable. I had never felt so stuck. But it's also where I can see sort of the first hints of like a little bit of compassion coming in. Like I was saying to myself, yeah, you're not doing this because of mom, but you're not doing this because of something else too, that has to come first. And I knew it was alcohol. I hadn't done much, I never Googled, am I an alcoholic? I thought about all these things, but basically in my head, the starting place was might have to be AA. And so I literally parked my car outside of a few meetings, and just watched and thought, and then started doing a little research on AA, and never got out of my car and went in for a number of reasons. And I'm not a huge believer in fate or anything. I think I was super ripe. I was looking for something. I didn't know what it was, but I saw the alcohol experiment. It was on the feed of this woman I followed for her news reporting, because it was just basic news. I didn't feel like there was a lot out there for me that just, she was a lawyer, and she would put this kind of just lawyerly spin on it, and it seemed to help me. And then I see that she's doing the alcohol experiment, right? And I was like, oh, wow. And I didn't write it down or anything, but it definitely registered. So much so that I don't think more than a day or two went by where I Googled it. And I found it, and that was on a Saturday, and I signed up, and I started the next day, which was Easter Sunday, and I knew I was going out with my family, and we all drink a lot. My in-laws, you know, it's like, I'm gonna drink. And I did it, and I did the 30 days, and I never drank again. And I mean, there was a few months after that where it definitely, I've said before, I felt like I was operating on a place of fear. Like I was more afraid to drink than I wasn't, which was not ideal, but it was okay, because it got me through all these firsts. It got me through my brother's daughter's wedding, and, you know, my husband and I have date night, all these date nights that revolved around alcohol. He's only ever had one or two, but, you know, for me, when we would go out to dinner, it'd be like, all right, I'm gonna have one, and I want to have a second, but I don't want to get a headache, and I want to have some at home. So I'll ask him if he'll split one with me. We've been through this all the time. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll split one with you. And then he would start to drink it, and I would pull it back. You know, it was just this game I played for years. But I just got all the firsts, and I, you know, at some point, it couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 months into it. I said to my husband, I don't think I'm gonna drink again. And that is my alcohol story. And, you know, I feel like in hindsight now, because hindsight is so great, there's like this, I talk about this trifecta of what the 3 points of what is the most meaningful to me. And so of course it's me. It's like sort of, you know, what I managed to do, and the trajectory of it. And it's funny, my husband was interviewing someone for a position, and one of the questions that they asked this person, I thought it was so strange, but he said it was actually amazing. They gave him 15 minutes in the room by himself and asked him to write down what his best accomplishment was, right? Wow. And just to see what they came up with. And we were actually talking about this at dinner last night, and I asked him what his would be, and he asked me, and I said, stopping drinking. Like I actually, you know, I never, if you had asked me even, you know, 18 months ago, I would have said, I don't think it's going to happen. And if it happens, I'm probably not going to be a happy person, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, so there's me, the big point. And then another point is just this newfound compassion for my father and my childhood and everybody I know who drinks, whether they have a problem or not. Like it just makes so much sense. And it never did. And I just wanted it to make sense when I was a kid. I just wanted someone to explain it to me, right? And then the third point is my kids. And, you know, I think about all the years I drank, you know, while I raised them, and feeling like I did so many things wrong. It's been able, you know, pretty quickly I was able to realize that I used to tell my therapist that my kids are great despite me, not because of me. Like, how are they so great? Like, how does this happen? Because it can't be because of me. And so I have a new appreciation of my mothering alongside drinking, right? And the fact that they're in their 20s. And another thing that I know was driving me, but that I wasn't super aware of, although I can put myself back there and feel the feelings, was before I started to do this, especially the holidays, right before this started, so like, 4 months before I did the experiment, I was super aware of that they were all of drinking age, and we were with families on both sides, and a Christmas party, and then Christmas Eve, and then Christmas Day, and it all revolved around drinking, and everybody was drinking together, and I was super uncomfortable. And I didn't want to be a parent who drinks with their kids. I didn't want to go hang out at bars with my kids, and I didn't want to get drunk with my kids on a holiday. And how could I possibly talk to them about this if I didn't know what I was talking about? And so, yeah, they're 22, 25, and 27. They drink. I know they drink less. They ask me tons of questions. One of my daughters was a bartender in Chicago for a few years, and she used to make mocktails for pregnant women, and she comes home and drinks them with me. He makes these amazing mocktails. And I feel like that's the greatest gift of all this is, you know, not just my kids, but like the next generation, and having a different way to understand alcohol.
That's so great. That's amazing.
So,
So one of the things that you said early on in your story that I just wanted to circle back to, because I found it really interesting, is the first time when you reached out to your sister, that, you know, your husband was home with the 3 kids and you just kind of, you're like, I don't know why I reached out to my sister, but I think because he had the kids, I didn't want to bother him. And I just wanted to recognize that, like, I felt that a lot in my marriage too, where when you enter into this parenting, which is so many people's drinking story, by the way, it's those years of parenting that are so intense and that we're not exactly prepared for, because how can you ever prepare? And they're so busy. And then the one support person, at least for me, like, you see that they're running just as fast as you can. You're running just as fast as you can. And on both sides, you kind of sit here and say, like, well, I'm not going to add anything else to your plate. So whereas you used to be the one person I would go to for everything support, like, I don't even feel comfortable. And it's not even conscious. It's just now that I'm unraveling that I've done this for the last, I don't know, decade or so, where, like, well, why didn't you go to your husband? Well, because, gosh, he has everything going on too. He's also involved with, like, this madhouse of a family and these kids, and everything's going crazy. So, like, I don't want to be one more thing he has to worry about, you know?
yeah, for sure. And that goes hand in hand with mental health. You know, I used to not want to talk to him about how anxious or depressed I was, because I didn't want to put that on his plate, because he was working 12 hours a day and coming home and being a pretty good dad, you know? And so, yeah, figure this out. I have to figure this out. I have to figure this out myself. I mean, he never asked that of me, you know? I did that for myself.
And I don't think they want that either. I mean, to be honest with you, at least in my journey with my husband, because, like, I think he's very different than me. He can quite honestly handle all my anxiety because it doesn't trigger or scare him. Whereas if I was going to bring it to, like, my mom, she would take the worry that I was feeling and amplify it. My husband, if I was going to bring it to him, he'd be like, okay,
what are we going to do about it?
How are we going to fix it? You know what I mean? So it would be a very different thing, which it's just been interesting for me when I heard you say it, because I feel like that's really been a aha for me. And my kids are 11, 9, and 3. And it has been a big aha that one of the things we haven't wanted to do is to just add anything else to each other's plate. And you think you're doing it from this place of, I mean, I think we are genuinely doing it from a place of kind of, you know, respect and trying to be helpful. But I don't think it's at all helpful, because you get married to do life with this person, and, you know, you need to be there for each other, which is interesting. It just kind of popped into my head as you were saying that.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to circle back to is you said, you were talking about drinking in college, and you said, but it wasn't a thing. And I was just curious, Robbie, of your opinion, like, when is it a thing? When does it become a thing from your point of view?
For me, I think it's my early 30s. I think it's when the kids were, you know, 6, 4, and 1, and it just built through my 30s. That's when I feel like that's when I can see it starting. And obviously it's this slow, slippery slope, you know, and like I say, it wasn't every day, but that's when it changed from occasional social drinking to using it at home, to if I was tired, because God knows I had 5 hours ahead of me. I can't be tired, right? Or if I was stressed about one of my kids being sick, or I was mad at my husband because he had all these evening meetings and I was doing it alone. It served multi purposes. Yeah. The 30s is when it became my thing. Yeah.
If you were going to, help somebody recognize for them, is it a thing or not a thing? Is there any guideposts that you would give, or?
Yeah, when it becomes something that you look forward to, when it becomes something that you start thinking about long before you do it, when it becomes something that makes you feel better even thinking about it. Before that, it was like if we went out to dinner and there was alcohol there, I might get a glass of wine. But if there was no alcohol there, I didn't care. I was there for dinner. But we stopped going to restaurants. I would refuse to go to restaurants if they didn't have alcohol because, what was the point? When you start, when you start building your day around it. And that can be really hard to see when it's, you think it's just a part of your day. But, yeah, I mean, that's when it becomes, I guess for me, it was really when it wasn't just the glass of wine that was enjoyable. It was, as soon as it popped into my head, it was something I anticipated and looked forward to. And by God, I was going to have it, even if I had to, throw all the kids in the car and on the, saying we were going to get one thing, but I was actually getting another kind of thing, yeah. I mean, but that's easy for me to say now because my awareness around it then was not there.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely remember one specific time we were living in New York City and we went to an Indian restaurant and somebody had recommended it and they thought it was so great. And of course, I don't know if it was back then or it's still the case, but a lot of Indian restaurants in New York City, they don't believe in alcohol or drinking, so they don't get their liquor license. And so we went in and I remember being like, oh, wait, like just looking at the menu and then asking and then being like, so you don't sell any alcohol? And
right?
being
What a bummer.
bummed. Yeah, it was such a bummer. And the food was amazing.
Right.
Then we found out that you could bring your own bottle.
Oh,
so
yeah.
the next time we went back, we would bring our own bottle. And I remember going back because it was phenomenal food. So it was in Brooklyn. And I remember going back and like planning ahead. And once meeting friends there and not having remembered a bottle and then having to be like, oh, we'll be right back. And, going down to the liquor store, the bodega a few blocks away just to find something. And it really was, I love how you describe it. Like you're just starting to plan things around drinks, it becomes very central.
Very central. From the minute you wake up, whether it's that you're not going to drink that night or it's that you are, and you're going to drink differently, or that it's, oh, screw it, I'm just going to drink as much as I want. It's one of the three. Every single morning. Yeah.
So good. So since you did the alcohol experiment, you have we've met each other now in person and everything because you joined the coach certification training. So what motivated that?
It's like it was my city council come to life. Like it was me I always wanted to do something that was like bigger than me, to do something proactive or positive, right? I had parents like that were really into giving back to the community. And my husband is like that. And I couldn't do that until I filled myself up, right? And then I was just like, wow, like this is something that will not only change people's lives profoundly, but it will make the world a better place. Because when you become alcohol free, you discover what your gifts are and what you can give back. And I mean, that's feeling like I'm doing something proactive in this world is everything to me.
So good.
Yeah.
And you've been doing really cool stuff. Do you want to share any of the stuff that you're kind of doing, especially for the New Englanders?
Yeah. So in the fall and the winter before COVID hit, I had local workshops that I partnered with a woman who owns a shop downtown, and we went through the alcohol experiment, and that was really great. That was getting my feet wet, but it went super well. And I wanted to do more of those, but that's been, shut down for now. And I have amazing one-on-one clients. I started off looking for people like me that were empty nesters. And I have worked with women like that, but just, fortune has it that other people have reached out that have been, I have a woman in her 20s, a woman in her 30s, 2 older men, and a bunch of women. And that has been amazing for me, because I just kind of did an about face, and I was like, I'll work with anybody who wants to learn about themselves, learn from others, and has like a broad view of the world and wants to make it better. And that's it. That's my criteria. And that's all that, I don't need anything else. And we just have this thing in common, right? And so that's been awesome. I've been doing some work on the path, which has been amazing. And then, I live in New England. So I've lived in Massachusetts my whole life. And we also recently got a place up in Portland, Maine. I love New England, and I love local connections. I love my small community, but I knew that this group existed. It was started by someone who's gone through this Naked Mind. And so I've been talking with her about having more of a presence and just offering free Zoom calls, which we've done 2 weeks in a row now, for a couple people that are going through the live alcohol experiment, a couple other people that just pop on to offer what they've learned, or just testing the water. And so that's been great, because there's just like no agenda on those. I love those, because if it lasts 15 minutes, great. If it lasts an hour, great. But they've both been really super. So I'm just kind of nourishing that. And
Awesome.
and so that's
So
where
have
I'm
you
at.
had any major speed bumps in your journey in terms of like pressure from family or friends or social life or your kids, or has it been pretty good?
No pressure from family whatsoever. Tons of support from my husband and my kids. My family, my 4 siblings, and a few of them are quite a bit older than I am. And actually, 2 of my sisters, they don't drink for different reasons, and my brothers do, but they're not interested, which is fine. And then I have my close friends, and the reactions from them have run the gamut, but overall super positive. I can't really think of any, honestly, I can't think of anything that comes to mind where I was sort of disappointed by someone's response or put off by someone's response. And maybe that's just because I've come to learn that like all the responses you get are totally normal for that person, right?
Yeah.
But no, I can't think of anything I can't think of any speed bumps other than, there's been tons of challenges. My mom passed away in March. And so that was like, wow. I lived with her for 3 weeks while she was on hospice. And then I was super aware that I would have been drinking every night and had to be up with her every 2 hours, and how miserable that would have been, and how I would not have been there for her, like just in body. So that was huge. And my kids all came home after being gone for 6 months or 5 months in March. And that was sort of a little bit of hell, especially after you've been alone for a while and figured things out. But again, super aware of like how it was a moment in time and how I wanted to show up. And
that's great.
And so, definite challenges, but met so differently. Yeah.
That's so great. So in terms of like, I guess, wrapping things up a little bit, first of all, I'm curious, where can people find you? So if they want to learn more about you or get involved.
Yep. So my website is called asanerway.com. So my name is Robbie Saner Sullivan, and Saner is my maiden name. It's perfect. So it's asanerway.com.
I love that.
And there's all my info on there, and a link if anybody wants to get in touch.
That's so great. That's so great. I think that one of the things that I really appreciate about, this podcast specifically, but your storytelling. So I just want to thank you for like the details, the details about even the books when you're sitting there and in the psych ward, and the details about what was going on with your daughter and stuff. I think it's so profound, that level of vulnerability and just bringing us into your world. So I really appreciate that.
Oh,
And
thank you. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you too, so to the final question, which I'm sure you know about, but if you're going to go back and, talk to Robbie, who was on the couch and just with 24-hour newsfeed looking, I personally call that the Rapunzel Syndrome, because I'm in it frequently in my life, and I have to catch myself and be like, I'm looking for somebody to rescue me. Like, I need rescue.
Yeah.
And then my friends and I joke, because I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready to climb down my own hair. Like, it's
Right.
just our little code word. Like, all right, I'm going to rescue myself. Nobody's coming. But anyway, I'm sure they're going to get me a t-shirt, hashtag my own hair or something. It's like become such a thing, but I'm like, oh no. The funny thing about what I call the Rapunzel syndrome is you don't know you're in it when you're in it. You literally, it's the moment when you realize you're waiting to be rescued that you actually have the capacity to rescue yourself. So it's one of those things. But anyway, so if we go back to Robbie's newsfeed wine on the couch Rapunzel syndrome, what would you tell yourself about what life is like now and some of the incredible things you've done?
What would I tell myself? All those cliche things that are so true. Like it's not only too late for you, but it's not too late for you to be an even better mother. It's not too late for you to not feel angry all the time. It's not too late to have all the work you've done, especially in the last 10 years, make sense and be worth something. I'm not quite sure if I answered your question enough.
I love it.
I mean, and I think the city council thing was just like my way, actually, of setting myself up to have to do something differently. So, I'm really thankful for that experience now, because I still don't know what I would have done if I hadn't found the alcohol experiment. Honestly, I always go back to that, but I'd like to think that I do know I would have. Because I'm not afraid to ask for help, and I am not afraid to be vulnerable, and I do advocate for myself. I would have found something, but I question how long it would have taken and how much bumpier it would have gotten. So yeah, super grateful for that book. Yeah.
I'm so glad. That's so glad. So yeah, the Alcohol Experiment, in case anybody's wondering what it is a book, but it's also a website at alcoholexperiment.com, where it is always free and you can go through it at your own pace, daily videos, and just a mindset shift to take a break and write your patterns. What?
I did the free self-guided one. That's what I did. I didn't buy the book until much later, and I didn't even read This Naked Mind until like several months later. That was just it. That was it for me. So yeah.
That's great. Yeah. So that's at alcoholexperiment.com. It will always be there and always be free for people looking to change or just, get some more insight. So it's great. Well, thank you so much, Robbie. This has really been fun and an honor. And again, I really appreciate your vulnerability and leaning into the story. It's really beautiful.
Well, thank you so much, Annie. That was good. Really nice to see you.
Very good. Did a good thing.
Okay. All right.
Let me ask you a question. What is better than change? Lasting change, of course. And if you've had trouble making change stick, either with alcohol or in any other area of your life, you are in for a treat. I created the 100 Days of Lasting Change to ensure that we don't just change for a moment, but we truly transform for a lifetime. And this program is so close to my heart. Thousands of people have been through it and their results are incredible. But don't take my word for it. Check it out at thisnakedmind.com/100 days. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.